All right, so today we're going deep on reinvention, like
Hmm.
really deep. We're diving into this guide, Cómo reinventarse y transformar tu vida,
Yeah.
which translates to, how to reinvent yourself and transform your life.
And it is quite the guide.
It is. It's packed with all these strategies for like leveling up your life. I'm already intrigued by some of the approaches.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things is how this source, it frames reinvention. It's not about some like drastic overnight makeover.
Right, right.
It's more about this ongoing process, this constant growth and evolution.
Yeah.
And it's not just limited to, your career or your job.
Oh, interesting.
It touches every single aspect of your life, potentially.
So it's like a total life upgrade, not just like switching jobs.
Exactly. It's about becoming a better version of yourself across the board.
I like that. I like that a lot. And they don't just throw you into the deep end, right? They really emphasize building a solid foundation first. One thing that stood out to me was that they suggest like using a DAFO analysis.
Oh, yeah. That's a really fascinating approach. It's taking a tool that's usually used in, like, the business world
Right.
and applying it to your personal life.
Yeah.
Like mapping out your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But for your own life, not for a company.
Oh, wow. So like a personal SWOT analysis for your life.
Exactly.
I'm kind of curious about that, though. How does that even work? I mean, when we think of DAFO, it's always in the context of businesses and strategy, right?
Right. But it's about turning that focus inward. So let's say, one of your strengths is creativity,
Mm.
but a weakness might be procrastination.
Okay. Yeah, I relate to that.
Right. An opportunity could be that online course you've been thinking about taking to like monetize your art or something, but a threat might be, self-doubt.
Oh, yeah, the self-doubt monster.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So by mapping all of these out, you gain these really valuable insights into your starting point.
It's like getting a clear snapshot of where you stand before taking that first step on this whole reinvention journey.
Precisely.
And you know what else I noticed? They even talk about like getting guidance from a coach or a therapist during this self-discovery phase.
Oh, absolutely. They stress the importance of having like an objective perspective, someone to help you navigate those sometimes murky waters of self-reflection.
Makes sense. Sometimes we just can't see the forest for the trees when it comes to ourselves.
That's it.
It's like having someone to help you interpret the map, even if you've drawn it yourself.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
But even with the best map and the best guide, I think there's this one big obstacle that we all face, and this source doesn't shy away from it at all. Fear of change.
Oh, definitely. Fear is a natural part of this whole process.
It is.
But instead of just like trying to avoid it, this source,
Yeah.
it actually encourages you to really understand where that fear is coming from.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It's a fear of like failure, fear of the unknown, or maybe, judgment from other people.
Oh, yeah. All valid fears. So once you've pinpointed the source of that fear, like, what do you do with it?
Well, that's where they get into the practical stuff. They have all these techniques, deep breathing exercises to calm that anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
positive visualization to like shift your focus.
Oh, I like that.
And even what they call gradual exposure, which is kind of like you slowly acclimate yourself to whatever it is that's triggering that fear.
Oh, that makes sense. It's like dipping your toes in the water instead of just diving head first.
Exactly. A much more measured approach.
So we've talked about understanding our fear, building that solid foundation, but how do we actually start building like momentum for change? I noticed that this source emphasizes positivity, specifically through gratitude.
Yeah. The good old gratitude journal.
Right.
It's a classic for a reason. This source really champions that daily practice of just reflecting on the things, even the small things that you're thankful for.
But is it really more than just feeling good? Does that actually help drive change?
It does, because it's about creating this positive feedback loop. When you focus on what you're grateful for, you actually start to notice more good things, and that in turn boosts your motivation.
Oh, interesting.
Right. The source also emphasizes celebrating every little victory, no matter how small. So like if you manage to, hit the gym every day for a week or finally finish that book you've been meaning to read, celebrate those wins.
It's like those small wins become fuel for the bigger journey.
Exactly.
I like that way of thinking about it. On top of that positive outlook, they also talk about managing your inner dialogue, right? Like that voice in your head.
Absolutely. Because sometimes that voice can be our own worst enemy.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. So how do we tame that inner critic?
The source really stresses the importance of identifying those automatic negative thoughts we all have, like, I can't do this, or this is too hard, and then challenging them. Right. And instead of those negative thoughts, they suggest replacing them with more realistic, positive affirmations. Like instead of, I can't do this, it's, I'm learning and improving every day.
So it's like rewriting the script in your head, trading that self-doubt for self-empowerment. I like that. But how do you know what affirmations will actually work for you? How do you pick the right ones?
That's a great question.
Mm.
The key is finding affirmations that resonate with your specific goals and values. But what's really encouraging is that they don't make this out to be a solo mission.
Oh, okay.
They emphasize the importance of seeking external support, whether that's mentors, people who've walked the path you're on,
Right.
or joining communities, groups where, you can connect with people who share your interests, your goals.
I can see how that would be really helpful, just having people to load on, bounce ideas off of.
Exactly. Because sometimes, we just need that extra boost, that reminder that we're not alone in this.
For sure. But with all this focus on mindset and support, I'm wondering, where do the actual concrete steps for change come in?
Right. That's where the source gets into the nitty-gritty of action planning.
Okay.
They introduce the idea of SMART goals. You've probably heard of those. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic goal-setting framework.
It is, and it's about breaking down those, big, sometimes overwhelming dreams into smaller, manageable steps that have a clear timeline.
So no more vague aspirations, but actual concrete plans with deadlines.
Exactly.
I like it. I like it a lot. And I also noticed that they touch on the power of habits, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Habits, they're like the building blocks of our lives.
What they are.
So they walk you through identifying the habits that might be hindering your progress.
Oh, like those pesky bad habits that just keep popping up.
Exactly. And then the idea is to replace them with new, more empowering ones.
Gotcha. So it's not about trying to change everything overnight, more like a series of small upgrades.
Precisely. Because small changes, they can add up to some really significant transformations over time.
I can definitely see that. And they don't stop there. This source also highlights the importance of pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. That's where the real magic happens.
Absolutely. That's where the growth is, the discovery.
I'm sick to hear more about that.
Me too. But first, I think we need to take a quick break.
Sounds good. We'll be right back after this short break to delve even deeper into the world of reinvention.
Okay, so picking up where we left off, this idea of comfort zones, right? This source, it really emphasizes the importance of strategically pushing yourself beyond those boundaries.
Yeah, I'm all about that. But how do they suggest we actually do that? Like, how do you step outside your comfort zone without, freaking out completely?
Well, they suggest approaching it strategically. So starting with small, manageable steps. Things that challenge you but don't, feel completely overwhelming.
Okay, so baby steps, but outside that comfort zone.
Exactly. It's about gradually expanding that comfort zone.
Yeah.
Each time you step outside of it, you build a little more confidence, a little more resilience.
I can see that. It's like each time you push yourself, you realize, hey, I can handle this. I'm stronger than I thought I was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it becomes a little less scary each time.
Yeah, that makes sense. But let's be real, change can be messy. It can be unpredictable. Even with the best intentions, we're going to hit some bumps in the road, right?
Oh, absolutely. They don't sugarcoat that at all. In fact, they dedicate a whole section to cultivating resilience.
Okay, resilience. So bouncing back from those inevitable setbacks.
Exactly. It's about developing that inner strength, that mental toughness to navigate those challenges and come out stronger on the other side.
I like that. But how do they suggest we actually cultivate this resilience? It seems kind of abstract,
Right. It can be a bit of a fuzzy concept. But they offer some very practical advice. One thing they emphasize is practicing patience and perseverance. Understanding that personal growth, it takes time, it takes effort. It's not about instant gratification. It's about sticking with it, even when things get tough.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't expect to run a marathon without training for it, right? You got to put in the work, the consistency.
Exactly. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And they also talk about the importance of actively reflecting on your experiences, both the good and the bad. They have the interesting concept of a post-mortem analysis.
Oh, a post-mortem. That sounds kind of intense.
It's not as scary as it sounds. It's about taking the time after, a significant event to really debrief with yourself. What went well? What could have gone better? And most importantly, what did you learn from it?
Oh, okay. So it's not about dwelling on the negative, but actually extracting those valuable lessons from every experience.
Exactly. It's about turning those experiences, even the tough ones, into opportunities for growth. And that brings me to another really fascinating aspect of this source, They place a huge emphasis on identifying your core values.
Oh, yes, the core values. Why do they think those are so important for this whole reinvention thing?
Well, they believe that understanding your core values, it's like it gives you this compass for your journey. It's about identifying those fundamental principles that guide your decisions, your actions.
Okay, so it's like a guiding light, helping you make sure your reinvention is heading in the right direction.
Exactly. It's about aligning your changes with what truly matters to you at your core. So it's not just change for the sake of change, it's purposeful change.
That's a good distinction. But how do they recommend going about actually identifying these core values? Like, how do you figure out what those are for yourself?
Well, they have a whole bunch of techniques they suggest, like journaling prompts, meditation exercises, even just looking back at your past experiences.
Oh, interesting. Like trying to spot patterns in the choices you've made, the things you've gravitated towards.
Exactly. It's like a little detective work, but for your own soul.
I like that. But what if you end up identifying like values that seem to clash with each other? How do you deal with that?
That's a great question. And, the source acknowledges that this can happen. And they offer guidance on how to navigate those trickier situations.
Yeah.
It's about figuring out what needs or desires are behind each value and then trying to find ways to integrate them. Or, at least find a balance that feels authentic to you.
It's like a puzzle, figuring out how all those pieces fit together.
It is. And those pieces, they can change over time too, so it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, our values can evolve, right? It makes sense that we'd have to revisit them from time to time. This is all really insightful stuff, but I keep thinking, at what point do we actually put these ideas into action?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And this is where the source, it gets really practical. They really emphasize that it's not enough to just reflect and analyze. You have to actually take action.
Right. Got to walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Exactly. So they offer this very structured approach to putting your transformation into action. Remember those SMART goals we talked about earlier?
Oh, yeah. The specific, measurable, achievable, all that good stuff.
That's the framework they recommend for creating your action plan. So it's about taking those big, inspiring goals and breaking them down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay, so bite-sized pieces that feel less overwhelming. I like that.
Right. And then it's about setting deadlines, anticipating potential obstacles, and coming up with strategies to overcome those obstacles.
So it's like creating a roadmap for yourself, but a roadmap that's flexible,
Yeah.
right? And because life happens.
Exactly. It's a guide, not a rigid set of rules. And along with the action plan, they also highlight the power of habits.
Ah, yes. Habits. Those little things that can make or break us.
They really can. So they guide you through identifying those habits that might be holding you back.
Yeah.
And then it's about intentionally replacing them with new ones that support your goals.
Okay, so it's like a habit upgrade.
Exactly. And the key is consistency, making those small, positive changes day after day. Because over time, those small changes, they add up to big transformations.
It's the compound effect in action. I love that. But I'm imagining, even with the best plan, the best habits, there are going to be times when, life throws us a curveball, right?
Oh, absolutely. Life is full of surprises. And that's where this source really shines because they dedicate a whole section to what they call cultivating a growth mindset.
A growth mindset. Okay, what's that all about?
It's about developing this belief in your ability to learn and adapt and grow even when faced with challenges. So instead of seeing obstacles as, the end of the world, you see them as opportunities to learn and stretch and become even stronger.
So, like, okay, this didn't go as planned, but what can I learn from this? How can I adjust my approach?
Exactly. It's about reframing those setbacks
Yeah.
and seeing them as valuable feedback.
I like that. It's about being flexible, adaptable, understanding that the path to reinvention, it's rarely a straight line. There are going to be twists and turns.
Absolutely. And sometimes those detours, they lead us to the most amazing discoveries.
So true. This is all so fascinating, but I'm wondering, with all this talk about inner work, mindset shifts, what about the importance of connecting with others on this journey?
Oh, that's a crucial piece of the puzzle. And this source doesn't overlook it. They talk about the power of support, the importance of having people in your corner who can offer encouragement, accountability, and guidance.
Yeah, it's like that African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Exactly. They highlight the value of mentors. People who have already achieved what you aspire to, learning from their experiences, getting their insights.
Yeah, it's like having a guide who's already navigated the terrain you're exploring.
Exactly. And they also talk about the benefits of joining communities or groups with shared interests.
I can see how that would be really helpful, just knowing you're not alone in this journey.
It is, and it can
Mhm.
be so inspiring to connect with others who are, on a similar path.
For sure. This whole conversation has been so inspiring, but I'm curious, where does the listener fit into all of this? How can we help them take these ideas and, actually apply them to their own lives?
That's a fantastic question. After all, knowledge is only powerful when it's understood and, more importantly, applied. So as we move forward, let's distill these insights into something tangible for our listeners to take away.
Yes, let's break it down into those actionable nuggets.
First and foremost, remember that reinvention is a journey, not a destination. Embrace the process, celebrate every step, and be kind to yourself along the way.
Progress over perfection, always. What else should we highlight for our listeners?
Absolutely. Another key takeaway is to remember that self-knowledge is your superpower. Take the time to truly understand your values, strengths, and areas for growth. The more you know yourself, the more effectively you can navigate this transformation journey.
It's like equipping yourself with the best tools for this grand adventure. What other wisdom nuggets do we have?
While building on that self-knowledge, remember to cultivate a positive and resilient mindset. Challenge those negative thoughts, embrace gratitude, and view setbacks as opportunities for learning and growth.
It's about choosing to see the possibilities, even amidst challenges, right?
Precisely. And finally, remember that you don't have to go through this alone. Seek support from mentors, coaches, friends, families, anyone who can provide encouragement, accountability, and guidance.
It's like having your own personal cheering section, pushing you forward. I love that. We've covered some valuable takeaways here, but before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's time for a final thought-provoking question for our listeners to ponder.
I completely agree. Let's leave them with something to spark their imagination and inspire action.
Okay, here it is. What is one small step outside your comfort zone you can take today to start your reinvention journey? And how will you celebrate your progress along the way?
Ooh, that's a fantastic question. It emphasizes that even the smallest actions can create a ripple effect of change.
Exactly. And celebrating those small wins fuels motivation and reinforces the positive changes you're making.
Absolutely. This has been such an inspiring exploration of this topic.
It really has, and we're not done yet. In part 3 of this deep dive, we'll be exploring some of the most intriguing and actionable tips and techniques from the source in even greater detail. Stay tuned, fellow deep divers.
All right, we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into reinvention.
Let's do it. I'm excited to get into some of the more practical, nitty-gritty stuff from this guide.
Me too. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground already, but I'm eager to hear about those specific techniques that help you actually make those changes happen. Yeah, this source is packed with them. And they don't just throw a bunch of random tips at you. They really build on each other, creating this holistic approach to reinvention.
I noticed that. And one thing that really impressed me was how they blended some traditional self-help advice with some really unexpected tools.
Oh yeah, like that default analysis we talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought to use a business strategy for personal growth?
Right. It's so clever. It really makes you think outside the box.
Exactly. It's all about finding those creative solutions and adapting them to your own life.
hmm Another thing that caught my eye was their approach to mindfulness. It's not just about sitting on a cushion and meditating, which is great, but they really emphasize bringing that mindfulness into your everyday life.
Oh, that's interesting. So how do they suggest you do that?
Well, they offer all sorts of practical tips, like, how we're always rushing through our day, barely paying attention to what we're doing.
Oh yeah, guilty as charged. Right, so they suggest pausing for a few mindful breaths before you respond to a stressful email, or really savoring each bite of your food instead of just shoveling it in.
Those are great examples. It's about slowing down and really paying attention to those little moments that we usually just zoom past.
Exactly. And the source suggests that this increased awareness, it can actually help you identify those patterns in your thinking and behavior that might be, holding you back from reaching your full potential.
It's like shining a light on those subconscious habits and thought patterns that we often don't even realize are running the show.
Right. But once you become aware of them, you can start to make conscious choices about how you want to respond.
That makes a lot of sense. So how do they recommend transforming those, unhelpful patterns once you've identified them?
Well, one technique that I found really fascinating is what they call thought challenging.
Thought challenging. I like the sound of that. What is it exactly?
It's all about questioning those automatic negative thoughts that pop into our heads. The ones that tell us we're not good enough or we can't do something.
Oh, yeah, those are the worst. But we tend to just accept them as truth, don't we?
Exactly. But this source, they encourage us to actually put those thoughts on trial.
Oh, interesting. Like a mental courtroom drama?
Kinda. They provide a series of questions to help you examine those negative thoughts critically. Like, what evidence do I have to support this thought? Or is there another way to interpret this situation? Or even, what are the consequences of believing this thought?
Wow, those are powerful questions. I can see how that would really help you deconstruct those negative thought patterns and create space for more positive and empowering beliefs.
Exactly. It's about taking back control of your mind and choosing to focus on thoughts that serve you.
I love that. And it reminds me of another key point they emphasize, reframing negative experiences. Like, instead of dwelling on what went wrong, they encourage you to look for the lessons learned.
Oh, absolutely. They even suggest doing like a little post-mortem analysis after any significant event, whether it's a success or a perceived failure.
Right. So it's about transforming those experiences into valuable learning opportunities, regardless of the outcome.
Exactly. And instead of beating yourself up about what went wrong, you ask yourself empowering questions like, what did I learn from this? Or what strengths did I demonstrate? Or how can I apply this learning to future situations?
It's about taking those experiences and actually using them as fuel for growth.
Precisely. And it all ties back to their emphasis on embracing imperfection.
Oh, yes, the beauty of imperfection. They really emphasize that, don't they?
They do. They remind us that making mistakes is a natural part of the learning process. It's how we grow and evolve.
Yeah, it's like if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough.
Exactly. So instead of striving for perfection, which is, let's face it, an impossible standard, they encourage us to embrace those imperfections as opportunities for growth.
It's about shifting from self-criticism to self-compassion.
Precisely. And that self-compassion, it's so important for staying motivated and engaged on this reinvention journey. They also talk a lot about celebrating your progress along the way.
Oh, yes, the celebrations. What kind of techniques do they suggest for actually doing that?
Well, they recommend creating little rituals or practices that help you acknowledge and appreciate your accomplishments.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Like what?
It could be something as simple as, jotting down your wins in a journal or treating yourself to something special when you hit a milestone.
I like that. It's about making those celebrations a conscious part of your routine, not just something that happens randomly.
Exactly. And they encourage you to really savor those moments of success, no matter how small they seem.
Because even small wins can have a big impact on our motivation, right?
They really can. They build momentum and reinforce those positive changes we're trying to make. And speaking of positive changes, we can't forget about the power of gratitude.
Yes. Gratitude. The magic ingredient. It seems like that's a recurring theme throughout this entire source.
It is, and for good reason. They believe that cultivating gratitude is essential for shifting our focus from what we lack to what we already have.
Okay, so it's about more than just feeling thankful. It's about actively cultivating that sense of gratitude.
Exactly. They recommend making it a daily practice, like keeping a gratitude journal where you write down a few things you're grateful for each day.
I've heard that's a really powerful practice. What kind of things do they suggest focusing on?
It could be anything, really, from the big things, like your health and your loved ones, to the seemingly small things, like a sunny day or a delicious cup of coffee. The point is to train your mind to notice and appreciate the good things, no matter how small.
It's about creating that lens of appreciation.
Exactly. And they suggest that this gratitude practice, it can actually have this ripple effect, impacting other areas of your life.
Oh, interesting. Like how?
Well, if they talk about how when you start focusing on the positive, you're more likely to attract more positive experiences. It's like creating this upward spiral of positivity.
That makes sense. It's like shifting your energy, your attention towards what you want to create.
Exactly. And that ties in beautifully with their emphasis on visualizing your desired outcomes.
Visualization, that's a classic. But I'm curious to hear their take on it.
Well, they suggest creating this clear, vivid mental picture of your ideal future self. So, like, what does your life look like once you've achieved your goals? How do you feel? What are you doing?
So it's about really painting a detailed picture, engaging all your senses.
Exactly. And they recommend spending a few minutes each day really immersing yourself in this visualization, feeling the emotions as if it's already happening.
It's like a mental rehearsal for your dream life.
Exactly. And it creates this powerful emotional connection to your goals, which can really fuel your motivation. But they emphasize that it's not just about daydreaming. It's about using that vision as a guide to take inspired action.
Right. It's about bridging that gap between imagination and reality.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the importance of having that clear action plan. We talked about SMART goals earlier, but are there any other tips they offer for creating a plan that you'll actually stick to?
I'm all ears. I need all the help I can get with that.
Well, one thing they emphasize is breaking those big, audacious goals down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Bite-sized pieces. Always a good strategy.
It is. And it makes the whole process feel much less daunting. They also recommend setting deadlines for yourself and even like brainstorming potential obstacles so you can come up with strategies to overcome them in advance.
So it's like being proactive about those potential roadblocks instead of just waiting for them to pop up and derail you.
Exactly. It's about being prepared and having a plan B and maybe even a plan C.
I like that. But even with the best laid plans, life is full of surprises, right?
Oh, for sure.
Ah,
And that's why they emphasize the importance of reviewing and adjusting your plan regularly. It's not about being rigid, it's about being flexible and adaptable.
makes sense. It's like you wouldn't use the same map for every single journey, right? You'd adjust your route based on the conditions.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And that ties in beautifully with their emphasis on embracing uncertainty.
Ah, yes. The unknown. How do they suggest we navigate that?
Well, they encourage us to view uncertainty not as something to be feared, but as an opportunity for growth and discovery.
Okay, so it's a mindset shift.
It is. It's about recognizing that those moments of uncertainty, they can actually lead us to unexpected breakthroughs and insights.
So it's about surrendering to the journey, trusting that things will unfold as they should.
Exactly. And they suggest practicing mindfulness to help us stay grounded in the present moment because, worrying about the future doesn't actually change anything.
True that. Just adds unnecessary stress.
Right. And they also remind us that we don't always need to have all the answers to move forward. Sometimes it's about taking that leap of faith and trusting that we'll figure it out along the way.
I love that. It's about embracing the mystery and the adventure of it all.
Exactly. And speaking of embracing the journey, they also remind us that we don't have to go through this alone. The power of support, having those people in your corner, it's invaluable.
Yes. We talked about mentors earlier, but what other types of support do they recommend seeking out?
Well, they encourage seeking professional guidance if you feel like you need it, whether it's from a therapist, a coach, or a counselor.
It's about recognizing that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Absolutely. And sometimes just talking things through with someone who's trained to help you navigate those challenges can make a world of difference.
I can definitely see that. And they also talk about the value of connecting with others who are on a similar journey, right?
Oh, absolutely. They suggest exploring support groups or online communities where you can connect with people who understand what you're going through.
Because sometimes just knowing you're not alone can be so empowering.
It can. And sharing experiences and insights with others can provide so much support and encouragement. And remember, it's not just about receiving support, it's also about giving it.
Oh, that's a good point. It's a two-way street.
Exactly. Even the smallest gestures of kindness and support can make a big difference in someone else's life.
And it feels good to give back, to be part of that supportive community.
It does. And that brings us to another key aspect of this whole reinvention process. Self-care.
Ah, yes. Self-care. What specific practices do they recommend?
They encourage you to find activities that nourish your mind, body, and spirit.
Okay, so it's a holistic approach to self-care.
It is. And it looks different for everyone. It could be anything from, taking a relaxing bath to going for a walk in nature to spending time with loved ones to pursuing a creative hobby.
The key is to find what fills your cup and makes you feel good. Yeah.
Exactly. And then make it a regular part of your routine. Because
Excellent.
they emphasize that self-care is not a luxury, it's essential for maintaining your well-being.
It's like putting on your own oxygen mask first, right?
Yeah.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that they suggest prioritizing self-care. It can actually enhance your productivity and creativity.
Oh, that makes sense. When you feel good, you're able to show up as your best self.
Precisely. And that brings us back to the importance of celebrating your progress. They really encourage you to acknowledge and appreciate those wins, no matter how small they seem.
Because those small wins, they add up over time, don't they?
They do, and they help keep us motivated. They suggest keeping like a victory log where you record all your accomplishments, big and small.
Oh, I like that idea. It's like creating a tangible record of your progress.
Exactly. And it's a great way to shift your focus from what you haven't done yet to what you've already achieved.
It's a reminder to celebrate how far you've come.
Exactly. And that ties in beautifully with cultivating a positive mindset, which is really the foundation of this entire approach to reinvention.
Positivity, it's like the secret sauce, isn't it?
It really is. They believe that our thoughts shape our reality, and that by choosing to focus on the positive, we're much more likely to create positive experiences.
So it's not just about thinking happy thoughts, it's about intentionally creating that positive internal environment.
Precisely. And they offer a whole range of techniques for doing that, from practicing gratitude to focusing on your strengths to reframing those negative thoughts.
It's about training your mind to see the possibilities, even amidst challenges.
Exactly. And to believe in your ability to create the life you truly desire.
Yeah.
But they also remind us that it's not enough to just think positive thoughts. We have to take action.
Right. It's about putting those positive thoughts into motion.
Exactly. They encourage starting small, taking one step at a time. It's about building momentum and trusting that even those small actions can create a ripple effect of positive change.
So it's about being consistent, showing up day after day, and making those small steps forward.
Exactly. And they remind us that the journey itself is just as important as the destination. It's about embracing the process, learning from your experiences, and, enjoying the ride.
I love that. It's about appreciating every step of the way, knowing that each challenge, each triumph is all part of this beautiful tapestry of reinvention.
Beautifully said. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I just want to reiterate one final thought from the source. Reinvention is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing journey. It's about embracing that constant evolution and trusting in our ability to create positive change at any moment.
That's so inspiring. It's been such a pleasure exploring these ideas with you. I hope our listeners feel empowered to embark on their own reinvention adventures.
Me too. Remember, it all starts with a single step. What will yours be?
That's the perfect question to ponder as we conclude our deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.